Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Doug here with a special bonus interview for you. So a couple months ago, we covered Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. We sent out a bunch of emails, a bunch of social media messages, and sometimes folks get back to us later. It's awesome that they do. So we don't have a new Friday the 13th, but we're working on them because there's a few more Friday the 13th this year. But we were lucky enough to interview Susie Donaldson. She was the second kill in Jason Takes Manhattan. And of course, I'm talking about actress and writer Tiffany Paulsen. So Tiffany, there's a little connection with her because we interviewed Josh Flitter, who one of his first big movies was Nancy Drew, and she wrote it. So we talked about how she got started in acting, growing up in a small town, and then how she made the transition to writing. She has a lot going on right now. A couple Netflix shows. She had a freeform movie. It was called Turkey Dropped. It starred Cheryl Hines. She worked on homage she did to Adventures in Babysitting. So she's got a lot going on. And yeah, it was pretty cool. She provided a lot of behind the scenes on the filming of Jason Takes Manhattan. So without further ado, here is another Jason Voorhees victim. Tiffany Paulsen. Enjoy. So before we get started, usually what I do is talk about how folks got started, where they grew up. But one thing that was cool is I saw your name a number of times, was obviously when we were reaching out to people for Jason Takes Manhattan and also for Nancy Drew because I interviewed Josh Flitter.
Oh, right. You said that.
Yeah, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get
a small world.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So we'll get into all that. And so how did you get into all this? Like, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a little town in Washington State called Kashmir. Yeah, it's about 3 hours from Seattle, in the middle of nowhere, for sure.
Nice. So at what age did you think about that you wanted to be an actress or write?
Oh my gosh, I always wanted to be an actress. Like, that was 100% my plan. I was, like I said, a really small town looking, to get out to the big city. And I was a pageant girl. I was junior miss. I, wrote on all the floats and it did plays in school, and just kind of always thought that would be my career path. And right out of high school, the first thing I ever auditioned for was a National McDonald's commercial. And I got it. And I was like, oh, well, this acting thing is a piece of cake. So while all my friends were, going off to college, I moved to the city, moved to Seattle, and got a waitressing job and, just started taking acting classes and working right away. So that was my plan. Skip the old college situation.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So McDonald's. Oh my God, that's awesome. And then from there, yeah. What were some of the early roles that were you doing in more commercial work before you got Jason?
I did. I was doing a lot of print modeling. I wouldn't say hotsy-totsy fashion modeling or anything, because I was not tall. I was never tall enough to really, make a modeling a career. But as far as little jobs, it was definitely, I did a lot of local commercials, a lot of print work in Seattle, boat companies and marinas. And I did a commercial for a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center where everybody in my hometown thought that, I had actually been in the rehabilitation center, that I was at rehab. So that was a funny one. But yeah, I did a lot of indie movies. But I got Friday the 13th. I was going up to Vancouver, Washington, which is where we shot Friday the 13th. I had an agent in Vancouver and an agent in Portland. Even though I was based in Seattle, everybody kind of spread out on the West Coast as much as they could. And Friday the 13th was my first big audition for a real studio movie. And I ended up booking it. So again, I was so young when I did that. I was right out of high school. I think I just turned 18.
Oh, wow.
So I, again, so lucky, big movie, this acting thing is going to be a piece of cake. And, and it never quite works out that easily. But that Friday the 13th was my first big studio movie.
That's very rare for somebody that is around high school age to actually be in usually the horror movies, it's usually people like 25, 30 years old playing high school.
Yeah. No, I was definitely young at the time and didn't know what I was doing. And I mean, I'm assuming you've seen it, so
Yeah.
you know the scene. It's not like that's your first choice, especially me coming out of like small town and being the goody goody girl, the pageant girl. But my agent at the time was like, everybody does a horror movie. Look at Jamie Lee Curtis, and like, Kevin Bacon, and like just kind of named off the who's who of everybody that started in horror. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I didn't know at the time how, I obviously knew that it was a long franchise, but until you've like been in the horror world, you don't realize, how prolific it is and that you're doing something that's so iconic that here we are talking how many 30 years later.
I know. No, it's crazy. No, those movies. And I think it's really cool about your scene. So were you a fan of Jason before you did that, or?
No, I don't even, I'm sure this is not the cool thing to say, but I'm not a horror fan. I don't like blood and guts. I mean, I'm a writer now and have been for many years. I write comedy. I write romantic comedy. I like happy, so murder and blood and mayhem are not my favorite things. So,
hey, at least you're honest. That's good.
Right.
But no, one thing that I think is really cool about that is that movie. I live in New Jersey, and that movie, they didn't really say like where Crystal Lake is, but there's like little hints in a lot of the movies that it could be New Jersey. But it's so funny because they shot that in Vancouver, and like the whole backdrop, like in your scene that you're in, and then the next scene when they show the cruise ship, it's like mountains behind it. And there's nothing like that on the Jersey coast on the way to, Manhattan. So no, that's such a silly movie, but it was really cool. Like the documentary, the guy had the director, I forget his name, but
Rob Hedden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob.
So he had such huge like aspirations for that movie. And it could have been something if they let him do what he wanted to, but there was just no budget for it. But one thing I thought that was really fascinating about your scene, and obviously the scene's a lot longer than what made it into the movie that people see for the most part.
Right.
But it's so funny because you're a Crystal Lake High School student, and I would think you would know the story because it really didn't happen that long ago.
Right.
In the canon of the film.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's only 9 years before, because there's this whole weird thing that the 7th movie took place in the future, like all these weird things. But it's so funny. And then in the deleted scene, it makes sense because you actually like talk like you know what's going on. But in the real movie, you're like, what about Jason? And I'm like, you would have to know this. It's like a huge story. Like nobody would forget this. But no, it's pretty.
Maybe I was the new girl.
That is true.
Maybe I just moved to town. I know there are quite a few things about that scene that don't make sense. Like if you're on a boat and you're being chased by a killer, wouldn't you maybe not stay on the boat?
Yeah. I wonder when you're looking at the script and you're talking to your agent, because these movies are known for like obviously these big like gore kind of scenes. Were you kind of did they have any ideas for you to actually have a scene that showed anything?
Well, originally in the original script, she jumps in the water. She does jump in the water.
Oh, okay.
That's what was supposed to happen. And then he fires the spear gun into the water and hits Susie as she's trying to swim away. And then if you just think about it was like, I don't know, January. So it was freezing, and just the coordination of shooting somebody, shooting the spear gun off the boat into the water, hitting somebody that's swimming. They would have had to get a whole stunt double for me to be swimming and, shooting on water. We weren't even on a boat. We were all on a sound stage. So that's when again, like poor Rob, who had all these, like you said, these grandiose ideas to make this a great movie. And then it was like, oh, there's no budget for that. And so it was really on the fly that they had to rewrite. Oh, well, just put her in a box. And they literally like built the box on the set, and I crawled into it. So yeah, it was never what it ended up being, if that makes sense. Like they were.
Oh yeah, no. You could tell like a lot of these movies, and then when you look at the deleted scenes. But another thing that was fascinating about Rob was that he had the idea for Freddy versus Jason then, but like the two companies, God, why can't I think of who writes Nightmare on Elm Street? Oh, well, Wes Craven. So
Yeah.
they couldn't Dimension. Was it Dimension back then?
Right.
Or New Line? Anyway, one of those. They couldn't like come to terms on it. But no, I thought it was pretty cool your scene. And then from there, you still acted. You did a few, you did some things after that. But when did you figure out like, hey, you know what? I have a story to tell, and started to become a writer?
Well, after that was, a pretty big movie, and it was a good part for me. And from that, I ended up getting an agent down in LA. And so I came down to LA. I mean, I had a little tiny agent, but I came down to LA and I started doing all the things that you do as a young actor in LA, where I worked at Six Flags, Magic Mountain. I was like Vicky Vale in the Batman stunt show, and I was Catwoman. And then I was doing that, and I was working at Universal Studios, giving tours on the tram, like just all those jobs that you do while you're hustling as an actor. And I was that girl that always got close to things and didn't quite get them. I'm sure you know Hilary Swank, right? Like Hilary Swank I know she has her 2 Oscars now. I like to think that she has my Oscars because like her first big breakout was The Karate Kid Part 4. And my agent at the time represented Pat Morita, who was like Mr. Miyagi. I get another huge franchise, right? Karate Kid. Yeah. And it came down to like me and her for that movie, and she got it. And it was like, I don't know, I swear 3 or 4 things that Hilary Swank always like got cast and I didn't get. So I was like having that career where, I would get close, and I screen tested for soap operas. And I think I screen tested one time with Lisa Rinna, now she's one of like the Real Housewives, and she went on to have this huge career and marry Harry Hamlin. So I always think like, oh, Hilary Swank has my Oscars and Lisa Rinna has my husband, because I would have been on General Hospital and then met Harry Hamlin. But anyway, so I was working for a producer and hustling as an actor, and I ended up, it's just like that tragic girl story where I met a guy and he lived in Chicago, and he was like, move to Chicago and I will marry you. And I went, oh, okay. And so I moved to Chicago, and while I was in Chicago is when I didn't have anything else to do, because I wasn't a theater actor, and that's when I really started writing. So and it just so happened like the first script that I wrote, I sent it into a pretty prestigious screenwriting competition, the Nichols Fellowships, which are sponsored by the Academy Awards, right? Like it's this script foundation that they have. And I ended up becoming my script was a finalist in that competition. And from then I got a bunch of meetings back out in LA, and I got a manager, and I ended up going out and writing a second movie. And that second script, again, not even knowing what I was doing, I ended up winning a fellowship with ABC and Disney. So I just got kind of really lucky about, like, kind of like with my acting career, the first couple things I got, but I got really, luck. What do they say? Luck and talent and time and everything. But I started, as soon as I got through the fellowship, my first studio job that I pitched on was Nancy Drew. And that was like, I wrote my first studio movie, and it got a green light, and then I'm getting movies made. So I thought, well, if I really want to be taken seriously as a writer, I probably need to stop going to auditions. And my agent had like moved to Colorado to, I don't know, have a ranch or something. And so it just kind of all made sense, and writing became something I was a lot more passionate about than acting. And here we are.
That's so cool. So what was it like getting that script? Were you involved in the whole process? How does that work? Like when they pick up, they're like, Nancy Drew, it's greenlit. What is your role throughout that?
Well, Nancy Drew was kind of a sad story for me, in that I worked so hard for, I don't know, a year or 2 on that whole movie and all things Nancy Drew. There's like 50 books, and, there's such classic icon beloved, and I'm writing for Warner Brothers. And once that movie got the green light, they brought on a director who kind of had my first lesson in studio movies was you see why writers become directors, because they take your script, and he went off and kind of wanted to do his own thing with it. So it didn't end up being exactly the movie that I had written. So that was kind of heartbreaking. It's still nice to get a nice paycheck and nice to have your movie made and have that credit. And, that was all really great for my career at the time and really propelled me. So I would never disparage that experience too much, but it didn't end up being the movie that I wrote. And that was that's a sad part, but that's like 99% of every screenwriter's experience in town, is that the movie you write is not ultimately the movie that gets made. But
is there a lot of credits that I don't know if it's the same? I just interviewed a casting director, and he, on IMDb wise, he only had, I think, like 15 credits, but then he like laughed when I said that. And he goes, "Oh, well, I've worked on so many movies, but you only get the credit is if they end up using you." So he was telling me like these horror stories that he would go into. They would be like, say it was Nancy Drew, and he'd pitch like, "Oh, Emma Roberts," and name all these people, and they'd be like, "That's great." And then they would start like with the process, and then end up just choosing someone else, but use those actor ideas. Is there a way that happens with like screenwriting? Have you written something and you get no credit for it, but it's out there?
Well, that writing's a little bit different because you actually have the IP. So it's really hard to, ideas get stolen, but I think what's reflected in my side of the industry, different from casting directors, is that I've been, like, if you looked at my IMDb page, like right now, I think I have 4 produced movies, which surprisingly is like really good. There are writers that go their whole career, and you're a professional writer and you sell shows and you sell pitches and you write movies, and none of them ever get made. The industry's changed a lot the last few years, where now studios don't just, they used to like develop lots of stuff that would never see the light of day. You'd hear, that movie, it took 10 years to get made, or it had 17 writers on it. And so while I've been a professional writer since like 2004. So I've been writing, for 15 years, having a really great career, always, knock, 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 always being employed, only out of probably the 20 movies that I've been hired to write in my career, and the 3 TV pilots that I've sold and written, I have 4 produced credits. So I think that, and kind of an answer to your question, your credits are certainly not reflective of how much work that you've done or
I know.
have done. Yeah.
I interviewed the writer of Poltergeist and Poltergeist 2, and he told me the same thing too, because he wrote a bunch of stuff, and then in 1992 it was just nothing. And then he was telling me stories about a lot of his people that wrote in horror and wrote in all the different action genres that he wrote in. He said, yeah, they're still writing, they're still trying to work, but just things just don't get made. So, but one thing that's really cool on here is now you have a few things that are in pre-production and post-production. Julie and the Phantoms, a TV series.
I have to tell you that.
No?
Well, it's definitely a real show, and a wonderful director named Kenny Ortega is directing. Kenny Ortega he started as a choreographer. He's like famous he choreographed like the Dirty Dancing, the famous Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze scene. And he choreographed, I want to say Flashdance too. Like he's a huge choreographer that he then transferred into directing. And he's this amazingly prolific director. And he directed like all the High School Musical movies and the Descendants 1, 2, and 3. And anyway, he's directed that, Julie and the Phantoms, as a TV series for Netflix. I'm writing a movie right now for Netflix, a big, fun Christmas musical called Anti-Claus, based on this book series that I set up at Netflix, that Kenny Ortega is directing. And somehow when Deadline did the press release, both of those projects were in there. And so the poor girl who's like written Julie and the Phantoms, or I don't know if it's on her page also, but it's on my page, and I am not actually writing that show.
Look at that.
So that's a mix-up, right?
So that's cool. Anti-Claus. So how is it working? I've never talked to somebody that's working with Netflix. How is that experience?
So far it's good. That my executive on that movie was an executive that I did Adventures in Babysitting. I wrote kind of an homage to the original at Disney Channel that I did with Sabrina Carpenter and Sophia Carson. And then a lot of that team went over to Netflix. And then ironically, my last movie my second to last, I had 2 movies made last year. My movie Holidays, that's going to be coming out in November, also stars Emma Roberts, which is really fun. And that's an original romantic comedy that I sold to Netflix. So I have a couple projects with them. But it was fun to like do one of Emma's first movies. And then now she's like 29 and she's, like a grown woman starring in this movie.
Now, were you on set for that movie, Holiday?
Holiday, I'm an executive producer on, and I was really involved in that. We shot it in Atlanta. And, now that I'm at a much different level in my career, I'm moving into producing and directing. And so I get to be a lot more involved. And I had another movie made last year that was just on in November with Olivia Holt for Freeform, which used to be ABC Family. And, we shot that one in Ottawa, of all places, which I had never been to in Canada.
Well, that's nice. You get to travel and check it out.
Yeah, I got to travel a bunch of times and got to be on set and, got to be really, really involved. So now it's much different than your early experiences where your kind of movies are kind of taken away from you. And now I can, proudly say my last couple of movies are pretty much word for word everything, that I've written, not having things changed and, twisted and all of that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's got to feel good. And that's cool. You got to work with Cheryl Hines.
Oh my God, Cheryl's amazing. Oh. Yes, we were so lucky to get her. She was absolutely fantastic, as was Olivia. Like, she's just a dream. That girl's so talented.
And that's cool. There's some people that Cheryl is just from Curb, and then everything else she's been in, the movie RV with Robin Williams. And she's another one that has a bunch of series that were on for like a few years, Cheryl. And then for some reason, like a Suburbicon she was great in. And that's really cool. You got a lot going on right now. That's awesome.
Yeah. Busy time.
Now, since you have all of this with the momentum that you have right now, is there a script that you wrote, years ago that you like are waiting to just like get out there?
It's funny that you say that, but yeah, there are a couple of them that I'm you kind of pull them out and you dust them off. And, I have an 80s movie, kind of like an homage to John Hughes, a teen romance that I have this amazing director attached to, Clay Cadiz. He directed, he directed Angry Birds, and he directed Christmas Chronicles for Netflix.
I love that movie.
Huge, like $60 million budget. And so I'm working with him he's attached to a script. We're probably going to take it out soon, and hopefully we'll get that set up and get that one into production. And I have a thriller that I'm pulling out that I love. You kind of just keep them all. They never go anywhere. And plus the business is so cyclical. Like I've been a romantic comedy writer forever. And how many years did you hear romantic comedy is dead? Nobody made them. And, then Netflix shows up and everybody turns out wants to sit home and watch romantic comedies. And now they're like, please write more romantic comedies. So it'll swing back and they'll be like, more serial killers, please.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. No, but it's cool. Like just that you can have those ones that you had from years ago. And when you have that name, you're getting the producer credits, people you're working with, and then boom, you can bust it out. And then, no, that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been super, super lucky even to just like, be sitting in my house from this business. I feel really, really lucky. And Friday the 13th was like pretty much my first thing that started it.
Yeah, right. Isn't that crazy when you think about it? And then you have all these other moments that, other people might have given up, like having those last, you for almost there for Karate Kid against Hilary Swank. Some people would have just like hung it up and be like, you know what, I'm going to go try something else. But look at where you are now. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
This is awesome. I'm really happy that was you. It's funny when I first started this, again, sometimes the agent emails aren't even right on IMDb or they go right into like a junk folder. But I remember that was one of the first movies I wanted to talk to folks about. And I remember emailing you and then I talked to Josh and then I just put two and two together when I was looking at the Nancy Drew. I'm like, I know that name, and then went back and hey, almost a year later, I'm happy I was able to finally talk to you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I am sorry it took so long. Like I'm terrible on social media, and this whole Instagram thing is like just new to me because they're like, you're having movies made. You need to be out there on social media. But there's like those two sections. So I know you guys were reaching out, and then I would eventually get around to
don't worry about that.
But I know I'm so happy that we connected, and you guys were, invitation. And really fun chatting with you.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm Jamie, the one that was reaching out to you on Instagram. Yeah. He knows it a lot more than I do. And I'm just a little bit younger than him, but I don't get any of that stuff too much. So no, I'm just glad that I was able to talk to you. But I'll check out all that stuff, and I'll check out Turkey Drop because that looks pretty cool.
Watch Turkey Drop. It's really cute, and Cheryl's really funny in it. It's just, it's a cute little easy popcorn movie. And then Holiday's going to be fantastic. Emma Roberts is in it, and Kristen Chenoweth, and Francis Fisher, and we've awesome. Luke Bracey. We've got just this amazing cast. I think it's going to be a really big movie for Netflix. We just have to wait till the next holidays.
Cool. Yeah. Cheryl just directed Sunday's Curb episode, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. She's amazing.
Sweet. Well, Tiffany, you're amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I appreciate you reaching out. Happy to chat with you.
All right, great. So that was Tiffany Paulsen. She was great. Make sure you follow her. She has a lot going on. The holidays on Netflix. They just name it Tiffany Paulsen. Yeah, she was a lot of fun. So don't forget, Thursday, I was lucky enough to interview Robert Hayes, who was in the greatest comedy of all time, Airplane. Of course, we talked to him about Airplane 2, talking about a lot of the acting roles he did in his career, how he got started. It was pretty cool because his story, which I love, the way he got started, was kind of by chance, It's kind of just because of the situation that he was in. So don't forget to check that out. Don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Check out our website, sequelsonly.com, and go watch some more Friday the 13th movies. And I'm going to play you out with a little tune from Jason Takes Manhattan. Good night.